Alright, so we are now going to start talking about the prologue to The Lord of the Rings. Just this a minute. Here we go. So I'm dividing this up. It is divided into fours, plus you have Note on the Shire Records, which I will probably add on to section 4. So you have 4 videos on this coming, so let's dive into it, why don't we? This book is largely concerned with hobbits, just like its predecessor, The Hobbit. Whereas in The Hobbit, we have 1 hobbit going on an adventure. Now we have 4 going on an adventure. Tolkien mentions that information from these books come from the Red Book of Westmarch. And there was in, I believe it was in the 14th century in Wales, they wrote some of their stories down in a collection of, called the, which was also called the Red Book of Hurgest. And so there is so Tolkien kind of, borrowed from that, since he was well versed in all these different mythologies, especially, Northwestern Europe. You see that stuff creeping into his stuff quite a bit. And but anyway, he starts talking about basically reiterating stuff that was already told in The Hobbit about hobbits and stuff that we learned about hobbits through Bilbo and his journey. He mentions that for they are little people, smaller than dwarves, less stout and stocky, that is, even when they are not actually much shorter. Their height is variable, ranging between 2 and 4 feet of our measure. They seldom now reach 3 feet, but they have dwindled, they say, and in ancient days, they were taller. Now, hobbits are also known as halflings, and you will see that quite a bit in the book. And that comes from the height of the Númenóreans, who were said to be about 7 feet tall. Elendil was known as Elendil the Tall, so he was a bit taller than that. And so about half of 7 feet would be 3.5. So that's about their height. And it says, again, they've dwindled, which means now, if there's any in existence, they're like 2 feet tall. But in ancient days, they were taller. I wonder how much taller. We do hear about the Bull Roarer, who got to be over 4 feet, and there's 2 hobbits in this book that are going to end up being like that. So were hobbits at 1.5 feet? But wouldn't that mean men were much taller? Or were they not called halflings then? That is very interesting. And he goes on to say that they don't like machines, or nothing much more simple than, nothing more complicated than a forge bellows, a water mill, or a hand loom. Though they were skilled with tools, they have this art, not magic, but an art of disappearing swiftly and silently. As it says in The Hobbit, there is little or no magic about them, except the ordinary, everyday sort, which helps them to disappear quietly and quickly when large, stupid folk like you and me come blundering along. Dwarves, of course, will be about 5 feet tall, 4'10", something like that. But yeah, he just goes on to reiterate what he had said in The Hobbit about them. He says that they are more related to us than elves or dwarves would be. They did exist in the Elder Days, but nobody knew about them. They were very secretive. They hid. So they would have woken up in Hildorian with the rest of humankind at the rising of the sun, back in the Silmarillion, if you'll remember. They live, and still do, in the northwest of the Old World. Old World, obviously, you think Old World, you think Europe, Asia, and Africa. And then, of course, you got the New World, which is the Americas, which exists at this time, but no one has gone there, apparently. Maybe some have, who knows. So that's how you see that Tolkien ties it all together, and Middle Earth, of course, comes from Norse and Old English. It was the name of our world. And he talks about the 3 different breeds of hobbits and how they migrate, because the necromancer shows up in Mirkwood, and so they kind of flee, except for the Storks, who kind of stay behind, but they go to like the Vales of the Anduin, about the Gladden Fields. So you have the Harfoots, the Stores, and the Fallowhides. Harfoot, of course, means hairy feet. Store means basically they're of heavier build, as he does mention here. They have beards, which most hobbits don't have beards. And they wear boots. Most hobbits don't wear boots. And of course you have the Fallowhides, which means, fallow means pale or yellowish. Hide is skin, so the name means pale skin, because he says that they are lighter in skin tone than they're white. The Fallowhides would be. It doesn't really say about the colors of the other 2, but you would assume not much more darker. You never know. I know some people have a problem with that in Rings of Power, and I can kind of see that, but anyway, and he talks about how they came to Eriador, and the Shire was, they went to Bree first, and then some migrated from Bree and went to the Shire. Founded that, and land was given to them by the king of Arnor, because that kingdom did exist at the time they got there. And that basically their only condition was that they'd have to let his messengers through and stuff. And but of course the North Kingdom fell, and the hobbits allege that they sent archers to help in that fight, but no tales of men make any mention of hobbits being there. And so he just talks about how they settled in the Shire, and when the king was gone, they set up their own office like a king called the Thane, but he is not a king. Basically, king in name only, kind of like a ceremonial position, kind of like the monarchs of Great Britain would be. And then, of course, they were troubled by plague, and then a really terrible winter, and Gandalf comes to the rescue at that point. But by the time of The Hobbit, and when we get to this story, it is a time of relative peace. Although they don't know about the things that are going on beyond that. But rumor will come to them, as we will see. And they were guarded by the Rangers, who are the remnant of the Dunedain of Arnor. The only battle in the Shire, of course, the Battle of Greenfields, where we are introduced to the Bolror Took, the great grand uncle whatever of Bilbo, who was said to be a tall hobbit. He talks about how they learned the craft of building homes out of the holes, out of the hills, out of holes in the ground. That they learned the art of building from men who learned the art from the elves, of course. He does say that the hobbits, fear the sea. They won't even go anywhere near it. Says most hobbits regarded even rivers and small boats with deep misgivings, and not many of them could swim, except for the hobbits of the Buckland. And of course you have the hobbits of the Marish, which is on the eastern border of the Shire, along the river Brandywine, which acts as a boundary between that and Buckland, and of course the rest of the world that is out there. The Shire hobbits don't travel much, but you get the Bree hobbits who are more traveled than they are. But yeah, that's about it in that chapter. Or that section, I should say. Good Lord. So I will be back soon with section 2. So hope you enjoy this video, and I will be back.